All right, guys. Manny gave me the idea for this, and I thought it was a great idea. Talking about when you're doing CrossFit, from what I've seen in my own personal experience, the growing pains along the way of being someone who does CrossFit, being a CrossFit athlete. What are a lot of the hurdles that I think a lot of us, not everybody, everybody's journey is a little bit different. What are common themes of things I see that are hurdles you have to get past as you mature as a person who does CrossFit? So I will say, like, for myself, and I think there's different for different people, I'd been a little bit of an athlete growing up, and then immediately I knew I wanted to be a trainer when I was in college. I was the guy training all my friends' girlfriends when I was a freshman, sophomore. I didn't have a girlfriend, but I was training their girlfriends. And I shudder to think some of the things I did back then as a trainer. But I liked working out. I've always been a gym rat. I liked it. And so I had worked out my whole life, and it was always a very personal journey for me. I always wrote down my workouts on my own. I always kept track of stuff. It was just, I really enjoyed the process, and I wanted to be a strong, capable guy. That was something that was very important to me. And so then I get exposed to CrossFit in my early 30s. And again, understand, no one knew what it was. There were no CrossFit gyms. There was just a website. But I start working out that way, and kicks my butt, which is what attracts a lot of us to it, is that, holy cow, this is really wrecking me. And I kind of like that because I like the challenge of it. And then as the CrossFit world grew and evolved, suddenly there was this competitive outlet for it. And again, it was always going to be competitive. As soon as you added a clock to the workout, Glassman knew as soon as he did that, this was going to attract competitive people because you're adding that time frame to it. Doesn't mean it doesn't attract uncompetitive people too, but it for sure attracts competitive people because of that aspect. And so then I was going down the road in 2010, 2011, 2012. Regionals is just starting. The Open is just starting. I'm like, I want to be competitive at this. And so that's where Janelle and I had moved here from Illinois to Texas, and we were both working out at Elite CrossFit. She was coaching there up on the north side with Emily and Jeremy. They're still there. And they had a team that was going to go to regionals. Janelle was doing a lot of extra work outside of class. Janelle was working as hard as I've ever seen her work with the volume of how much work she was doing. And again, this was pre-Scarlet. I was working at Lifetime at the time and sneaking over there to do workouts. But I got into that stage I see a lot of people get into, and Janelle did too a little bit, where more is better. I need to be doing stuff outside of class. I need to be doing this Olympic lifting program and this powerlifting program. I need to be working on this stuff for handstand push-ups. And you're just pushing and pushing, and you get very impatient. And guys, all you guys know that initial joy of getting into CrossFit, if you've been doing this long enough, to start getting better. And whether you've been an athlete before or not, suddenly you're doing stuff you didn't maybe think you could do. You're doing stuff that when you walked in the gym the first time, you're like, holy cow, that looks cool. I wish I could do that. And now you're doing it. And that's really fun. And that can continue, depending on when you got into this and what your history was, for 2 to 5 years of that fun time. But I think one of the common flaws then is we want more. We get impatient with it. And more is not always a bad thing. Again, if you're starting out, you want to spend a little extra time on your deadlift, or you want to spend a little extra time getting pull-ups. I think you need to be very specific though, and I've talked about this in previous videos. The extra stuff has to be very specific, and you can't work on everything all at once, and you're not going to be able to get better at everything all at once. And especially for strength takes a long time to get. You can get a better engine in months. To get stronger, those first strength gains are deceiving. Because when you first start getting stronger, it's just your neurological system getting more coordinated at firing all your motor units. So it's strength you already had, you just didn't know how to access. And now your body knows how to access because you're getting more athletic. That can continue for a few months up to a year, maybe even a year and a half. But then suddenly I peaked what I've got. Now I got to grow new muscle tissue, and that rate of getting stronger slows down. And there's nothing you can do about that. There's really not. What you want to do is the minimum effective dose of strength, which is a lot less than I think we've been taught in the past, and a lot less than most people want to do, even when they want to get stronger, but it's not going to speed up the process. It's just not. You've got to work on it for a long time, and you've got to eat a lot of protein and be living a pretty healthy life if you're actually going to get stronger. Like, it's inevitable. If that's going to happen, you got to be doing those things. But anyways, I was in that more stage where I was doing all the extra stuff too, and I was the type too that would just kind of force it on movements. And that was how we were going to go to regionals with Elite, Janelle and I. It would have been really fun to be on the same team. In 2012, I believe it was, and I would do the ugliest ring muscle ups you've ever seen. Muscle ups that if I saw anybody in the gym doing right now, I'd immediately tell you, stop what you're doing. Don't do any more ring muscle ups. But I was doing those, and yeah, caught it real wide, tried to bring it in, and that was my first torn labrum from doing ring muscle ups. Again, not the fault of the movement, not the fault of CrossFit. I was doing something I had no business doing at the time because I was trying to be better than I was in that minute. I was trying to be better than I was. And that's something I've had to learn a lot in life, frankly. But I think that's one of the initial hurdles, is doing the more. And if you keep doing the more, everybody I saw that was always more, there is a very short shelf life on your career as a CrossFitter, because you just can't keep that up and not wear yourself out and get really burned out. And so that sweet spot eventually down the road is when you're just doing class. This is when CrossFit is working as it should, when it is brilliant in its simplicity. You're doing a thought out program. You're doing just class and maybe a little extra stuff on something you're trying to work on, whether it's rehabbing from an old injury or trying to get that deadlift PR that you just want to get. That's just fun. It's fun right now. Doing those kind of things and being very specific with it, but the continual class is not enough. I just think guarantees you're not going to be doing CrossFit very long, and then it totally defeated the purpose. Because again, I don't care. I don't want you to be Uncle Rico, where you should have seen me at 32 when I was super fit, and they're looking at you now and they're like, you worked out? Don't be that person. You want to be in this for the longevity, because being fit isn't a test you pass and then, oh, off I go, I passed that test. It's a never-ending process that we never get through. This is the best way to do it. And so you just don't want to burn yourself out on it by being too impatient and realizing more is not better. So I think that's a very common theme. I think another common theme is not being able to get away from the competitive side of it. The competitive side will always be there, and it is great. And I want it to be something you dip your toes into every once in a while. But you can't live on that, because I think if you live on the competitive side too, and maybe that means you're doing a lot of competitions, maybe it means you're just competing in class, maybe it's because so-and-so in that other class, if I am not always more fit than that person, I am a complete loser. And we all know we've thought that at times. And that's something you've got to get past too, because I don't care who it is that I'm more fit than them. CrossFit is going to bring out movements and energy patterns and combination of things that person is better than you, and you just got to live with it sometimes. And a lot of us have a hard time living with that. But things I see that I know someone's competing, when I'm telling someone to do touch and go power snatch, and they're like, why would I do that? I'm not as good at it, and it sends my heart rate to the moon. And I want to be like, exactly, you just answered your own question. That's why you should be doing it. When you're if an athlete in any sport is competing at that sport, is their practice always what they're great at? That's the last thing they practice. They practice all the stuff they're not good at because they're training. They're not competing then. Then once they're competing, you play to your strengths, you skirt the edges of the rules, you do everything you can to have that competitive advantage when you're competing. But you don't get better by always competing, because you never work on the stuff you need to work on. And that's training. And that's even outside of being an athlete. If you're always competing in class, you're gonna so limit how you get better, and eventually you're not gonna be able to be competitive how you want to be, and then you're just gonna quit. Or I think it's gonna be very likely that you will quit. It's gotta be something you enjoy outside of where I finished on the leaderboard or how competitive I was at that. And I think when you can turn that off and not measure your self-worth over whether I beat this girl or that guy, that's when you found the sweet spot to move forward. When we started King William District CrossFit, I was always at the top of the leaderboard. like, it was a smaller gym. We were newer. I was younger, and I was pretty much winning most of the workouts, and that was fun. And then I'll tell you, like, when I met Danny and I were not, I was running MBS Fitness. I met her there, and she was like, I can do this. I want to be good at it. Now, Danny got into CrossFit because she is competitive and she wanted to compete. I know Danny would tell you this. She did not get into it because she was wanting to be more fit. That was a nice ancillary side benefit. She got into this because Danny wanted to compete. And I think that is still, if I can be frank, Danny's weakness, is Danny's always competing. Because I don't think Danny loves working out just for the sake of working out. Danny loves, she was an athlete in college. She likes being athletic and competitive. And I get that. That is a good outlet. And that's why CrossFit is an outlet for that. But you can't do it all the times. I guarantee you, when there's a workout, Danny knows she can win, whether she should or shouldn't that day. Danny's going to go hard, and Danny's going to make sure she wins it, because that's one of the main reasons she still does CrossFit. There needs to be a balance of, yeah, when I know I can finish close to the top of the leaderboard, I still want to too. And back then, when I realized as that was dying off, the gym was getting bigger, I was getting older, I'm not going to lie, that was hard for a little while. That was a little tough on the ego, that like, oh yeah, I think my days of finishing at the top are probably over. And now I'm stoked if I'm anywhere near the top. But I'm more stoked on Saturday. We did that 10 minutes of Cindy and the 1 mile run. I was middle of the pack on Cindy. And if I wasn't dead last on the run, I didn't check through the end of the day, I was pretty close to dead last. I was stoked with that workout because that was the first time for me in a while I've run a mile. Wasn't great at it, but I want to still be able to do it. And I want to be able to train it and get better at it. I'm never going to be a good runner, but I can be good for me as a runner. And I'm riding higher off that than I am when I'm high on the board because it's a deadlift workout. And I think you need to get to that point where, yeah, have fun and do the competitive things when you know you can. But when you're only going to try when you know you can win, or when you try and you feel bad about that workout because you didn't beat somebody or do as well as you should, that makes this a very rocky road of a way to work out. And I think it can just be a joy all the time. So that's where I say that's another one, is learning to turn that competitive thing on and off. I don't think we'll ever all be perfect at it, but I think it's something we can get better at. I know I've gotten a lot better at it. And it just makes this a lot more rewarding to do the training stuff. Because yeah, I'm going to go touch and go on these. It's going to send my heart rate to the moon. And so may beat me, and I don't even care. I know I worked on something that was my weakness that day, and I got a little bit better at that, and that's what moving the needle forward on our fitness does. So I think this is long enough for now. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Several stories in there. But I just want to tell you guys that the reason this works for so long is there's no other way that leaves so little meat on the bone in regards to fitness. It is going to keep you looking the way you want to look, feeling the way you want to feel, able to do all kinds of athletic stuff no one else your age can do. And it's going to do that for as long as your body is capable of, based on how you're eating too. And in the midst of that, no other way really provides that format. When I go to work out to do this thing I do as part of my life, I get to see all my friends. And I get to be in a group that's just a lot of fun. And it just provides the outlet to be as fit as possible and to have a community to be a part of. And I don't know any other way that does either of those as good as a good CrossFit gym. And I appreciate that you guys are excited about it too. And you guys are my walking advertisements. But just know, when you're in the joy of this, we can be a little bit annoying when it's all we talk about. You're out with all our other Kingland District CrossFit, Metfix, Southtown folks. You guys want to tell each other about each other's workout? Great. But for non-CrossFit people, that's not the best way to bring them in. Frankly, it's a good way to turn them off, because you get really annoying when you're talking about it. They don't understand what you're talking about. They don't care. And as much as you care, they don't care just as much. And they don't get it. Until they've done it, they don't get it. No matter how you explain what was going on, they have no concept of what you're talking about. Wait till they compliment you on your arms or your back or something physically you just did, or how you look or how you're looking that dress. Wait till they do that, mention you do CrossFit, talk about it as little as possible, And that's what's going to get them in the door. And I would appreciate that. All right, guys, let me know what you think of this one. Right on.